Love Karla Kielsted's work, so it was really fun to think about. And I was thinking more in the sense of not so much an influence, but a confluence with her work, insofar as it feels like when I found her work, which was really recently through my friend Teresa Wong, that it felt like a strong affinity, and I felt like all these different ways that she was exploring things that I'm often exploring, and that in seeing her work, it just gave me more confidence, or more just a sense of like, yeah, that actually, like, go with that, you know, do that thing. And she's a really inspiring performer, really like incredible physicality and just virtuosity and play. Like, there's just a great sense of play in her work, and emotional complexity, and it's really and a lot of flexibility. So at the end of my reading, we're going to just show like a 3-minute video where she's talking about her piece Necessary Monsters, which, did any of you see that at Yerba Buena a couple years ago? So that's the piece that I'm going to sort of spring from tonight. That was a full-length evening that was inspired by Borges' book, The Book of Imaginary Beings, this book. And so in this book, Borges goes across all these different traditions and just finds like all these different creatures and just kind of describes them. And he just looks at all these different ways that they're all just aspects of our psyche, and, you know, just things that we need in our emotional makeup. And so I just wanted, so in Karla Kielsted's evening called Necessary Monsters, she's pulling this quote from him where he's just talking about how the dragon is a kind of necessary monster because it keeps coming back up, and so it's kind of a way of like holding difficult, you know, emotions and all the things that we don't quite know what to do with. And so she, in Necessary Monsters, she has all these different creatures that are in the book, and they're embodied by these different performers, and so anyway, I recommend that you kind of follow. There's some videos of that online, and so I'm going to read a couple pieces from the Borges book, just short pieces, 3 of the different creatures, because they just felt connected with some things that I've been thinking about, like different aspects of creatures in transition. I've been thinking a lot about the feathered dinosaur, which is considered to be, there's a lot of debate about, is it like, did it go from the ground up, or, you know, did it started to fly at some point? You know, it's a transition between ground and flight. And so there's debate whether, was it like a tree animal that just sort of started gliding, or was it a ground animal that started running and sort of like caught the wind and like floated? And so just, I find that really interesting. And that's one strand. And then this other strand of, I've been writing some poems that are set in the New York subway. And a lot of these creatures happen to be sort of underground creatures, or like the underworld. So I just chose 3 of these creatures, and I'm just going to read a few key lines about them, and I'm going to read some poems that in some way kind of play with those. So this one is called the Abau-Aku, I think. I'm not quite sure I pronounced that. And this one is just fascinating because it's a very conceptual creature. So on the staircase of the Tower of Victory, there has lived from the beginning of time the Abau-Aku, which is sensitive to the virtues possessed by human souls. It lives upon the first step in a state of lethargy, and comes to conscious life only when someone climbs the stairs. So just think about that when you're climbing the stairs, metaphorically or literally. The vibration of the person as he approaches infuses the creature with life, and an inward light begins to glow within it. At the same time, its body and its virtually translucent skin begin to ripple and stir. So I think that creature is in some way, it's kind of like, it's this creature that lives on your virtuous evolution. So as you sort of decide to go one way instead of the other, you kind of like give life to this creature. So it's kind of an interesting collaboration, you know, that you're not just kind of doing these things for yourself. Somehow this entity that's conceived of as getting healthy through your difficult choices, you know. I thought that was really fascinating, and it kind of merged with a lot of like dream images that I've had of like these creatures that are kind of half there. And then this monster called Acheron, and so this is a creature that is larger than a mountain. Its eyes shoot forth flames, and its mouth is so enormous that 9,000 men could fit inside. And so this is basically this creature that lives in the underworld. And what I thought was particularly interesting about this is that it appeared, so this person is getting kind of a tour of the underworld, and then his guardian angel disappears, as they so often do. So, but the nice thing about when a guardian angel disappears is you kind of know they're around somewhere, and so then you can be like a little more brave with the scary thing. And I think that that's partly what this monster represents. So the guardian angel disappears, and this, you know, and then he comes upon this, and then the person who's getting the tour is pulled down and sees this huge creature that inside the monster is tears, fog and mist, the cracking and crushing sound of teeth, fire, glacial cold, dogs, bears, lions, snakes. So it's basically contains, it's like this hell is an animal with other animals inside it. So that's another kind of conception. But mostly that sense of like the thing that you see when your bit of security has dropped, you know, that you're kind of left, those moments when you're just kind of like, well, what the fuck is going on? And you just don't quite know where your stability is, but then it kind of returns to you somehow. I think that is partly what that creature represents. And then finally this one that is called the Nisnas, N-I-S-N-A-S, and it's basically a creature that's just half formed. So it's just one eye, one cheek, one hand, one leg, half a body, half a heart. And that, I think, is a really interesting conception because there's this idea that you know, I was just talking to a friend today and I was telling him about this poem, the D.H. Lawrence poem, Song of a Man Who Has Come Through. And he's like, yeah, but I'm not through. You know, it's sort of like I haven't come through, I'm still in it, you know. And I think that we're all like in something, you know. And so this idea of like a creature that kind of encourages us that we're always kind of in process, and again, that kind of transitional state. So so that's just a little glimpse of the book that inspired Karla Kielsted's piece, Necessary Monsters. And I'm going to read some poems that in some way just kind of play with that sense of mostly the underworld and that idea of transition. And one of these, and definitely this first poem is inspired by just kind of being in conversation, not directly, but just sort of in the spirit of Karla Kielsted's work, just noticing her nimbleness and flexibility. And so this poem is called Underworld, and I'm thinking about translation and transition and the sort of passages that we're all always going through. And so the titles, it's in sections, and the titles are just phrases that I've collected over the years of like awkwardly translated, usually Japanese to English. And I just love those phrases. I don't know why. They're just a little bit off from like what a native speaker might expect to hear, you know? So like they just do some slightly like little thing that's different, and they somehow I find them thrilling. I don't know why. I just love. There's something. They seem kind of like those creatures in a way. They're sort of coming through one language to the other. So so those sections all have those titles, and the poems just are these pieces that are just kind of from wherever. So it's called Underworld. 1. Let's enjoy yourselves. I was the altar over which he draped himself. I knew to hold very still so as not to disturb his praise of the water. 2. Engine room is serious place. Time does not leave you to rot. Rot is its promise, and it will not fail you. 3. Do we have boyfriends? I find there an interactive throne, delicate moon jelly white padding. The throne responds to your body, cilia, fine hair on a flower, adjusting to your posture to hold you in place, so you can feel the calibrations of your own resistance and where you easily move. 4. I touched a tiny nature. You were not ready to leave, but you had to leave, your belongings in a vault. White dust powders the black upholstery of the desk chair, has left a fine film on the glass of a framed diploma. A finger, not yours, clears the glass to reveal your name. 5. This is a scene in the subway with father and son. 5. And tiny animals like the cat. What happened after that? The monster came and ate me. What about me? Did the monster eat me? No. He was too full from eating you? I don't want him to eat you. If he eats me, we would be together in your stomach and we would start a new world. Okay. 6. The brightness of the crown doesn't like to work in the light room. A roller coaster has a single track at the end of it. A roller coaster has a single track. At the end of it is a little compartment called the brain, connected to the rest of it by an accordion tube, like a vacuum tube or a respirator. Flimsy, but apparently strong enough. The car catapults through the main track and into the brain, which disengages when the car enters. It loops its way out and has sensors so that it swerves up just as it almost hits the ground. 7. This is what I've always wanted to talk to you. The freight elevator has 2 buttons, B for basement and VB for very basement. I press the latter to take me to you. It drops fast so that my head grazes the ceiling, and when it lands, I come back to my feet. It opens into an office with low ceilings. Rain falls from the acoustic tiles. The workers and their machines are adapted to this rainfall. 8. Do you think there are 2 when there are only 1? Lauren is showing me the small clay house she made. It has a little open cone that will direct smoke through a chimney. She says she'll put incense underneath it to create smoke in the chimney. She tells me she is looking for incense in the shape of a puck. But I am actually picturing cone-shaped incense, so that when she says puck, it is as if I have never heard the word. There is a squall of idea and word, and I say, what does puck mean? As if I've never heard it. And she says, you know, like a hockey puck. 9. European dogs are living freely. A stack of negatives, I pick one up and place it in my mouth, lay it onto my tongue like a lozenge, the film developing onto the emulsion of my tongue. So the next poem, that was just a long series. The next poem is part of a Subway series, and this is a lot of poems that in some way come through a Subway turnstile. But this is just one of that series. So, yeah, I think there's really nothing I need to say about that. Okay, so it's called Turnstile Fire. 1. Tunnel. One fuck of a cold night. Can barely bend my fingers to strike the match. Just this small fire, just our part of the tunnel. We didn't think the Big Mac wrappers would fly like that. 2. Platform. Fire on the tracks last night north of West 4th trapped the trains for 3 hours. I'm boarding now at 7th and Flatbush, certain I will die from the back from the back blow if a new fire starts. There is always a new fire. I look over the other passengers, the last people I will have met on this round, in case we are to become some kind of cohort, an incoming class in another life. But dying isn't even the issue. A quick, complete fire doesn't sound so bad. It's the smoke filling the car. It's having to deal with these people. How will I carry the woman in green spandex leggings, whose thighs fill the two-seater and who is now sleeping, unconcerned apparently with our imminent demise? Have you read about that guy in Boston? He's totally blind, but he carries in his mind a working model of the New York City subway map. That's who I think of, this man through whose mind my train moves unimpeded. And because, isn't memory a kind of care, almost caress? This care he took weirdly calms me, that my train is part of a living circuit in some idiot savant god. I don't like how this term idiot savant makes the extravagantly elaborated knowledge of some seem useless, or at best useful, but only to that one person. Idiot being from the Greek for the self. What is the opposite of idiot? This car full of people? It's not their knowledge I turn to when the car does stop in the tunnel and I know the fire has come. Just a signal relay problem this time. But in those 3 minutes, as we wait, it is through the phosphorescent light in the tunnels this man has imagined that I crawl, following the swaying lamp, through to another exit he carefully included, this man in another city, this man who can't even see the map. Another descent poem. This poem is called Elevator Shaft. Sorting my mail as the elevator door slid open, I dropped my ring of keys right down the dark gap, slip of a space that waits every time I step in. Perfect aim, though it seemed unintentional. So easy to want to add them to a long list of things once held close, now irretrievable. Each new entry attaching to those that came before. That was the fall I was fond of saying I had looked straight down the throat of evil. Sometimes, to see how it sounded, I substituted for evil, death. Also, I liked explaining to my friends how valuable it was to have fucked the devil, as I carefully termed it. How useful to know the contours of that face. But this wasn't like that. Not like when my body dropped down onto him and for a moment stayed absolutely still until his breath locked onto mine. But it was ordinary like that. I could feel the narrative drawing me down to the basement, pulling me into the control room, its door marked with a crude handwritten sign, the careless gesture of the letters planting the necessary doubt. The flywheel will give, the girl will be crushed. For the sake of the story, I was certain I was alone in the building that night. Dank air and a low ceiling, and the half-lit panel glowed red, and at the back, a hollow steel door. I slid the hasp in its tight track, found an empty column of darkness. I kneeled forward, balancing against the frame, searching the dirt floor. At the end of the flashlight beam, a lone glove, a Metro card, and my silver ring of keys. What surprised me was the ease of drawing them back to me, how far in I could reach. At another time, I might have climbed into the shaft to get a better view of the chamber's underside, hanging 9 flights up, to get a closer look at how the cable held, imagining, almost relieved at imagining, its snap. My neck arched back. From here, I can't read the angle of my chin. Does it lift in defiance, supplication, or wonder? Read one more poem from this group and then one or two from Poses. This poem has to do with that sense of the awkward gait, the transition, the creature that's half one way, half another. But this is a creature that is a sofa on the top of someone's car, driving down Page Street. So it's an animal with an awkward gait. So this poem is called Slope. Amber took the hill so slowly, the couch never felt the incline, though the slope was considerable, and though the gray sofa was bound by no ropes. Only its own second-hand weight and the sheer traction of its plush upholstery against the roof of Amber's Honda kept the sofa always in one place relative to the car, on it, though the vehicle itself, as has been noted, was moving. So slowly was the vehicle moving, however, that in the mind of the couch, it always felt itself to be situated on a flat surface. The spaces between each increment of the tire's rotation forward created, in the mind of the couch, a planar surface, letting the couch be content to move with the car, but never in front of the car or behind the car. It never moved faster than the car, because it never had the chance momentum would have given it to overtake the car, or the drag to lag behind. It always stayed moving exactly at the same speed as the car, with Amber driving it, who knew with her foot to maintain a pressure on the accelerator so even as to keep the car and the sofa in the exact relative relationship to space and time at all times on the ride home with no rope. So, let's read a couple poems from this book. These poems were written, I used to go to a drawing group and write from the model instead of draw. So, but I would follow the same constraints, like the time poses and using large paper. So these follow that. The pose seeks to catch the model somewhere between where she thought she was supposed to be and where she thinks she is supposed to be. A 2. If I could live my life like a 2-minute pose, look, see the gesture, embody the gesture. Water posits itself over the stone. It shapes the stone and is shaped. Time's up. Let's see. Just read 2 more of these. During the break, Ellie stands facing the wall, scanning the banner, wearing only her rabbit fur jacket. There's something about the nudity continuing through the break that exhausts people, like falling asleep with the light on. When the model puts on her robe for the break, it is not only for the model's comfort. The fur jacket ending just above the tan lines from her string bikini creates a zone of attention that peripherally pulls people from the conversations they're trying to have and causes them to look into their beverages as they talk, rather than risk looking in Ellie's direction. She takes off her jacket and resumes the pose. It is as if a hot fan has been turned off. Everyone resumes drawing, and Ellie starts to sing. The model is lying on her back with her legs slung over to the right and her head turned to the left. I can feel the release of it, the opening of her chest, the opening of the chest, the twist of the spine, the stretch along the side, haptic knowledge. How does the drawing record that knowledge? What are the traces of subjective experience? Yesterday, when we did handstands against the wall in yoga, I loved pitching forward onto my hands, the feel of my legs balancing above my hips, the exchange of weight, inverting the usual traffic of blood and gravity. All day I kept replaying that action in my mind. All that was left was actually to do the handstand right there on Fifth Avenue. Now my hand is on Louis's head, dog of miraculous comebacks. In my hand, all the dog's heads I've held. Sweet tilt of his face. Maybe Selena can tell the neighbors he would have fewer problems if he weren't so good at living. Now he's pushing the full weight of his will into me. Right under my hand, what keeps him alive. Petting Louis has become my drawing.